start the recording. I see you've done that. So if we have some announcements or records, or do we have a quorum?
Chair, two things, if I may. We have a quorum, and also in the attendee list, I have somebody who is labeled as board administrator. I do not know who that is. Could that person please identify themselves?
Hey, this is Ali Bersasko with Lane Transit District, Board Administrator.
Thank you. I wasn't sure who that was. Thank you very much.
Great, Ali. Thanks for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
All right, having that, I'd like to convene this meeting of the Metropolitan Policy Committee to order. And if first item on our agenda, not to mention that we're smiling everyone, but we have any adjustments to the agenda or announcements from our members. It's awful quiet out there, so I'm going to take that as a no. Any announcements from any MPC members? Oh, Randy, you've got your hair. Councilor Groves, what you got?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to quickly say there's been a lot of congestion and overlapping construction projects in downtown Eugene that I'm sure many of you have experienced, and we have heard a number of complaints and concerns expressed about it. And I just want to say these were never planned to be happening at the same time, but it's in looking into the issue a little further, it's been we've been informed by Public Works that there's been some supply chain problems that have just kind of stacked these all up at once. And, you know, you can't, once a contractor's kind of plugged into a slot, it's really hard for them to move around because they have other jobs. So anyway, that's, hopefully we won't be in this situation in the future, but, you know, our apologies to those who have been inconvenienced, but those are the reasons. It was circumstances that really weren't in the city of Eugene's control. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy, for that. And let me remind folks, we have a mantra in the development world that says, bite off more than you can chew and chew like Hades. So here we are, but we'll get it done, and we can just bite it. We'll keep going forward. Thanks, Randy, for updating us on that. Anyone else have any comments they want to make or announcements? Paul, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate something that I hope all of you saw in an email I sent out a couple of weeks ago, that LCOG, in partnership with Lane County, received the Protect grant, the grant that you signed a letter of support for last year. It's a Federal Highways Administration grant to create the Sustainable Lane Transportation Resilience Plan, or Resilient Lane, I'm sorry, Resilient Lane. And it's $5.33 million. Again, details are in the email I sent you. You've all hopefully seen that. I just wanted to also take this opportunity today to specifically thank the staff that put that grant together, including Lane County staff, Cassidy Mills, Becky Taylor, Sasha Vartanian, as well as the LCOG staff that led that, Rachel Dorfman, Denise Walters, Kelly Clark. So thank you.
Yeah, good work, everyone. That's a good deal. Hey, from that thing we passed last meeting about getting in Springfield, that little sweeper, I'm still awaiting for the mayor to give me my scheduled ride on that. So when we get that handled, maybe we'll go there. All right. All right. Well, let's move to item 5 then. If we have no other announcements or things, this is the approval of our last month's minutes. If there are any changes or any questions to the minutes, now would be the time to ask those. If not, I'd be looking for a motion. Brenda.
Chair, Mr. Zako in the audience has their hand up for public comment, I do believe.
Oh, did we miss that? I'm sorry, Mr. Zako. Let me just turn my chat on. Okay, we can hear you. All right, Mr. Zako, are you still back there? Let's back up just a little bit.
Thank you, Chair. I was waiting for you to get to comments from the public, so let me move Mr. Zako into the queue here.
Good morning, Chair Lovell, members of MPC. No worries, only in year 4 of the pandemic, we're still trying to figure out how to do these remote meetings and not see people face to face. No harm, no foul. Good morning, everyone. I just want to let everyone know that BEST, in partnership with Live Move at the U of O and ARP, with support of the City of Eugene, is organizing the Better Ways Block Party on Sunday, May 19th from 1 to 5 in the afternoon. This is intended to be a family, fun, educational, diverse celebration of transportation. All of your agencies are invited. Many of you are going to be tabling there. We're going to have music, food carts, a marching band, a kinetic sculpture, events for kids. Actually, my staff and interns are doing amazing work. I'm not sure all the things that are happening there. It's a new event in the spirit of Eugene's Sunday Streets, which was discontinued before the pandemic, and we're hoping that people turn out and have fun. Thank you so much.
Awesome, Rob. Thanks for that announcement. And that's at the park block right across the street.
Sorry,
from
I
the
should have
public
said,
safety
it's
building,
the
right?
park blocks. It is the Farmers Market Pavilion and Plaza, and parts of Oak and the park blocks around there will be closed for the marching band, for demonstrations, for electric vehicles, for people on rollerblades, for Eugene Bike Polo. Again, I'm not sure all the stuff that'll be happening there. I'm looking forward to seeing what turns out. Thank you again.
Awesome. Great event. Thank you very much. Paul, if you seen anyone else on the public comment side?
I do not share.
All right, well, good deal. Well, let's move back to item 5 and the meeting minutes approval of last month. If there is no comments or changes, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. If you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Could you try again?
Did you hear me? Okay. Oh, okay. My watch was talking to me.
Second.
Not sure I understand.
Doesn't understand me. Okay.
I have that problem. My wrists don't understand what the left hand's doing either. There you go. All right, I have a motion to approve the minutes and a second. All those in favor signify by either saying aye or a thumbs up in the screen.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we've got a couple of things on our meeting that are some housekeeping things. I think there's some policy issues that we need to kind of get squared away to meet some state and federal mandates issues. Obviously, we're not going to celebrate a nice big paving project that we're going to do, but right now, our item for 6A is the Metropolitan Policy Organization issues, which is an action item. It's to approve the resolution 2024-02, which is to adopt the addendum and programming funds. And Cassidy wrote me up such great stuff about this. I want to pass that information on to you so you have it. Each year, the partner agencies of the Metropolitan Policy Organization work with the Oregon Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, and the Federal Transit Administration to update and adopt a unified planning work program for the transportation planning that covers a 2-year period. The MPO updates this plan with an interim addendum to the following year that identifies any changes to the work plan. So the changes that we're looking at now are an updated certification review, findings from our September 28th, 2023 season. And then secondly, the updated planning project products and timelines. And then lastly, a special project review and update. So I know that Ellen has got some stuff that she wants to pass on to us. So Ellen, hopefully I didn't take a lot of the steam out of you and would love to hear from you.
No, I think you summarized it well. If you'll recall, last month we did a presentation that went into detail about what the changes were to that addendum. And we are now ready to consider approval of that post collecting public comment. So that's what we're doing today, is considering approval of that.
Good deal. Thanks for all that hard work. Is there any questions for Ellen or anything pertaining to those changes? It was in your packet. A lot of good reading there if you were looking for a way to make your eyelids heavy sometimes, if that's that time of day you read that stuff. Hopefully it's in the morning. But I'm looking for a motion to approve resolution 2024-02, adopting the addendum and programming funds. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to
Okay, I
approve.
got a motion by Steve Moen. Looks like I got a second by Commissioner Farr. Sounds good. All right, for the motion, we've got a motion on the table to approve resolution 2024-02, adopting the addendum and the programming funds. All those in favor signify by aye or a thumbs up in your window.
Aye.
Aye.
Good deal. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we've got a little bit of an extended information item coming up on our regional transportation plan update. This is for a long-range transportation planning document for Lane County's urban areas comprised of, our surrounding cities, of course. And it represents a coordinating planning process with local jurisdictions. And it's for a multimodal, don't you love that name, multimodal transportation system that will accommodate forecasted population and economic growth. So without all of spoiling alert that goes on, Ellen, I know you've got a great staff presentation for us, so we're eager to hear it. So why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, and I don't know if Kelly wanted to say anything before I started, but the intent of these agenda items is to have kind of ongoing conversation about our process for regional transportation plan work. So you'll be seeing a lot of us at these meetings, and some of it might be, it might seem repetitive, but the intent is to make sure that we're keeping you all in the loop on all of the work that we're doing. So the piece that I'm going to talk about today is just an extended version of what we talked about last month about our strategies for public engagement for this long-range planning process. And I'll just provide a little bit of updates. In your packet, you have the summary of all of our different types of strategies that we're going to deploy for this outreach campaign. And the things that we talked about with our TAC this past month, I'll give you a quick update on that. So we have our request for proposal up right now to get a consultant to help us collaborate on this project. Hopefully we will have somebody on board early this summer. We will really be collaborating with them. Last time we handed a lot of it off to consultants, and I think this year we're going to be splitting a lot of that work between LCOG staff and the consultants. But some of the things we'll have the consultant support on is developing the online open house. They have the expertise on that, and just kind of the technology piece of it, I think will be really helpful to have a consultant on board for that. Additionally, we talked about the travel benefits and barriers survey last month. This survey is something that the city of Eugene started, and we have now integrated it into our long-range planning effort. So each RTP, you will get a new regional travel benefits and barriers survey. We will be adjusting some of the questions that we asked last time, because as you recall, we did that during the pandemic. So we had a lot of different ways of framing the question that kind of helped people understand how they traveled before the pandemic, during the pandemic. And so we'll be adjusting some of those questions a little bit. Something new that we did not do last year, I think partially because we were all working remotely and did not have public engagement in person, was focus groups. So we are currently doing focus groups for some of our transportation safety outreach, and we would like to continue something similar for our RTP outreach, just a way to better understand people's perception of transportation issues in our community. One thing that we talked about with the TAC that we are still kind of in discussion about is whether those focus groups will be consultant-led, and then we will receive the summary of those focus groups, or if staff will participate in them. So that's still a to be decided piece of the engagement. And then of course we'll do tabling events, open houses, the online survey. We have in the last year and a half really expanded our outreach within the community for transportation options work, whether that's through helmet distribution, things like our May is Bike Month work, which we did a kickoff party for yesterday. We're just out talking to people and giving them information is a great opportunity to have conversations about what issues that they're facing within their transportation and their journeys. And then we did talk about this a little bit at the last meeting, but we created a mailer that we sent out directly to community members that are within geographic locations that have a high concentration of underserved populations. And we will, even though we didn't get a huge response rate from that last year, we are going to continue to do that, partly because we did it during COVID. So who knows if that impacted how many people responded, but also because it's a great way to just know that we have at least reached out to those specific addresses, and it's pretty low cost. So we will be doing the mailers again. We talked with the TAC this month about expanding some of those locations. So we really just took kind of the census data and took those top locations. But we're going to work more closely with our staff to identify locations that may not reach that threshold from the census perspective, but we feel is a good location to send mailers to. And then the other piece that was added to this memo that we didn't talk about last time is our interagency consultation, which is required by our federal regulations. And it's something that we do as part of our planning processes for all of our work, including the UPWP. So we have done a lot of work through the recent public engagement plan update to kind of reinforce those relationships with those agencies. Sometimes it's hard for us to keep a current staff person just because it's not, we're not working with them at all times. So I think we have a good, robust list of people that we're going to work with, and hopefully we'll be able to get some feedback from our plan, which sometimes we don't always get that from that interagency consultation. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch on this month. We will be coming back pretty regularly to give folks updates on, okay, we have a consultant on board, or okay, we're doing this piece of the public engagement. I think we're erring on the side of maximal information for you all. So feel free to give us feedback on that. If you feel like it's too much or not enough, please let us know.
Great, thanks for that, Ellen. Any questions for Ellen? I've got just one. It was kind of interesting to me when you're talking about public engagement. And I see Mayor Van Gordon's got his hand up. So I was at a prayer breakfast this morning, and it seemed to me like the churches kept scratching their heads about not being informed. I'm just wondering if people are checking out of the public processes more than ever since COVID, or if there's a way that we need to rebuild certain tentacles of communication with certain, folks like churches and faith groups and that sort of thing to kind of start that ball rolling again. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ellen?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I think all sorts of organizations like that are natural places to have those conversations. So thank you for that comment.
Yeah, good deal. Mayor Van Gordon.
Yeah, thanks for the update. This is a great update. Going through this, for multiple times. I think the thing I keep thinking about from a public engagement perspective is just finding time to sort of explain to people the sort of why this stuff's so technical. And sometimes I think we're just sort of challenged by, why are we soliciting this information? What are we going to use it for? And how to make, an average person sort of an expert enough in transportation to get the feedback that we're looking for.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, I was at the seminar or at the conference last week, the Dorchester conference. I think one of the themes there is that the reason government moves so slow and so technical is because we have to cover so many bases of communication to make sure that we're making sure we're meeting our transparent needs. And I think sometimes just in the length of doing that, we lose a lot of folks along the way. So I don't know if there's a solution to that problem. So, if you got a great one, let me know. Let everybody else know so we can run our government more effectively. All right, Ellen, anything else? You good? All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So moving along, Rachel and Kelly have some presentation to us on the Infrastructure Voluntary Evaluation Sustainability Tool. If that's not a mouthful acronym, I don't know what is. I thought the Navy was bad, but you guys are coming up a close second, I got to tell you. So there's some better integrated triple line, bottom line sustainability principles that are going to help frame some updates. And so I'm looking forward to hearing what you all have to say. So whoever wants to take that away first, feel free.
Well, I'm glad that you're the one that had to say the acronym, so I don't have to. I'm Kelly Clark. I've presented on this a few times already, and actually wanted to introduce you all to Rachel Dorfman, who's on our team and has led us through this invest evaluation and really spearheaded kind of understanding what it all is and how can it inform our updates. So I'm going to hand this over to Rachel, and I'm going to share my screen too as she's queuing up.
Thank you, Kelly, for the introduction, and thank you, MPC, for the opportunity to present today. So again, I'm Rachel Dorfman. I'm a planner at LCOG. Thank you also, Chair Lovell, for, getting out that mouthful, Infrastructure Voluntary Evaluation Sustainability Tool. I was planning to say it. But in February and March, LCOG staff conducted an evaluation of the current adopted 2045 Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, using INVEST. And basically, like Chair Lovell said, it's a tool developed by the Federal Highway Administration that's designed to evaluate the sustainability of an agency's plans, programs, and projects. So Kelly, we can go to the next slide. So LCOG staff used INVEST to evaluate if and how well the 2045 RTP addresses sustainability through a triple bottom line lens. From that initial evaluation, we generated a list of recommendations for ways this RTP can better address sustainability. We've reviewed these recommendations with the RTP Technical Advisory Committee and the Transportation Planning Committee, and are here to present them to MPC. So I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes introducing the tool, and then I'll walk us through some of the draft recommendations. Before we get started, I do think it's important to note at a high level that INVEST measures how well the RTP incorporates certain sustainability best practices, not how well it meets federal regulations. So next slide. So INVEST is a voluntary web-based self-evaluation tool. It can be used to evaluate system-level planning and programming. As I mentioned, INVEST measures triple bottom line sustainability, meaning it considers social, environmental, and economic factors. The tool basically consists of 17 criteria that each include a series of questions about how well the plan incorporates sustainability best practices. So next slide. These are the 17 criteria, and don't worry about reading them now. We're going to go through some of the key recommendations from each criterion in a minute. I just want to note that the memo also contains a lot more information about what we think the RTP is already doing well with respect to each of these criteria and where there are gaps or areas to improve. So next slide. And here are just a couple of high-level key takeaways from the evaluation. The current RTP already incorporates many best practices, but there's room for improvement. There are opportunities to improve on the baseline set by INVEST. So in some cases, we're meeting the requirement in the criterion, or we're doing the best practice. But again, we think there's an opportunity for improvement. So many of the recommendations align with updates the LCOG team is already planning for the RTP. So that was kind of nice to see alignment there. Some of the recommendations are more administrative or technical in nature, while some require additional discussion to thoughtfully implement. And finally, the recommendations we're presenting today are offered as suggestions to be discussed by MPC. And one last takeaway that we didn't include on the slide is that our team thought this was actually a really valuable exercise to help identify and frame needed improvements to the RTP. And we've also had the opportunity to share our experience and feedback on using the tool with FHWA. So next slide. So there are a lot of recommendations. There are 17 criteria and 56 recommendations in total in the memo. And since we're not going to have time to present on all of the recommendations today, we're planning to focus on a subset that require more thought and effort in how they're carried out rather than those that are more administrative or technical in nature. So what we're looking for today is feedback on whether the recommendations we present are of interest for future discussion as they become relevant during the RTP update process. And I want to note quickly before we move on into the discussion that our focus on a subset of the recommendations is definitely not intended to limit your feedback on the other recommendations we presented in the memo. And our intention, like I said, is to bring what we believe are the most salient recommendations to you and also help focus our presentation today since there are so many. So next slide. So I'm going to read through the recommendations for each criterion. I'll provide some context or background information as relevant, and then I'm going to pause before moving on to the next to see if there are any thoughts or discussion. And we'll also have time for discussion at the very end too. So I'll move through them pretty quickly unless there's a desire to discuss. And that said, please do feel free to stop me at any point if you'd like to discuss something in more detail or if I'm moving too quickly. And one more thing I want to note before moving into them is that the recommendations are designed specifically to address the INVEST criteria. So if you want to make a suggestion about how to incorporate sustainability more broadly in the RTP, we'll be happy to take note and consider how to incorporate it. Okay, so here we have the first two criteria. The first one is economic development and land use. So we plan to bring one recommendation back to this body, which is consider if additional performance measures are needed to help monitor and demonstrate progress toward economic development and land use goals. So are there any thoughts or discussion about this recommendation? Mayor Van Gordon?
I think I'm fine getting more information about it. I think I would have, I'm just more curious about what the next sort of layer down is, right? Because as a body, right, we're not a land use body. And where if we're sort of saying our land use plans at the city level are sort of informing the RTP, there's probably a win there. But if we sort of go down the path of, hey, we're going to sort of artificially create out of whole cloth a kind of land use function for us, I'd have more questions at that point.
Thank you, and that is definitely noted. Yeah, we will not want to be stepping out of our lane on that. So the next one is criterion. The next criterion is natural environment. We identified 2 recommendations here for discussion, which is incorporate objectives that explicitly support ecological function and consider additional performance measures to support ecological function. So a little bit of context here, the RTP already has several objectives that directly or indirectly relate to ecological function, including the first one is protect natural, cultural, and developed resources from the negative impacts of transportation. The second one is reduce transportation-related air and water pollutants, and those are both under the healthy people and environment goal. So we don't currently have performance measures that directly support ecological function. The measures for the healthy people and environment goal are miles traveled, mode share, and system completeness. So we thought this would be an opportunity to strengthen what's already in the RTP. So any thoughts or discussion on this one before we move on? Okay, so next slide. For the social criterion, we identified 2 recommendations for discussion at MPC. Continue to expand community engagement to include historically underrepresented groups and coordinate with partner agencies to document their public participation processes. So we're already meeting the invest requirement for the first best practice, but including the recommendation here reflects our region's continued prioritization and expansion of these efforts. And then the intention behind the second recommendation is to better communicate and document how projects are identified for inclusion, both in local plans and the RTP, with a focus on how the public is involved in those processes. This is one of the primary ways we intend to address feedback during the last RTP update cycle about the RTP's project list. So community engagement and project selection are 2 topics that we will generally be bringing back to MPC for discussion. So we thought it was appropriate to include these on this list. Any thoughts or discussion here? Okay, so we'll move past criterion 4 is integrated planning, and those recommendations were largely administrative. So we'll move on to the next slide. So number 5 is access and affordability. We are proposing bringing 1 recommendation back to this body, and that is to add maps that analyze housing costs and access to transportation. This is a nexus that we have not explored in depth. The RTP currently does not analyze affordability of housing through its relationship to transportation investments. And I'll also mention here that at the Technical Advisory Committee meeting, Naomi Zwerdling with ODOT mentioned that ODOT did a housing transportation study that looked at tools to encourage housing development well served by transit. So we could be, looking to that as a resource. Any thoughts here? Okay, so for safety, we have incorporate more socioeconomic data as part of the project selection process to help evaluate and prioritize strategies for different user groups, and consider adding additional safety performance measures. I'll just quickly say that there is a federal performance measure around safety, and the RTP also currently has 1 regional safety-related performance measure, and that is transportation-related crashes. So this would be an opportunity to go above and beyond to measure progress toward goals in other ways. So discussion here. Okay, next slide. Next, we have multimodal transportation and public health with 1 recommendation for MPC, and that is work with Lane County Public Health to develop a health impact assessment to evaluate the health impacts of RTP programs and investments. We are currently coordinating with Lane County Public Health to consider ways to integrate health more explicitly into the RTP. Conducting a health impact assessment or an HIA is one of the strategies we're considering. And HIA would help the RTP meet a best practice that's identified in the INVEST tool, which is to evaluate the health impacts of projects and programs to determine whether planned transportation investments will help meet public health and active transportation goals. We also, I want to note too, that we heard from jurisdictional staff at TPC that there is support for understanding the health impacts of the RTP, but also some concern about adding process that could be burdensome. So we definitely want to be sensitive to that. We're exploring different ways to scale that work and different ways to measure and articulate the RTP's impact on health. So there will be more to come on that. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. And I'm certain the documents will drill down deeper on that regarding the health impacts. And I'm sure health impacts have to do with emissions and transportation route efficiency. But I'm also hoping, expecting that it considers the access to and the scarcity of hospitals.
Okay, thank you for that.
Rachel, my question is it sounds to me like a lot of the health impact assessment work, is there hard data to support a lot of that? Some of that time sometimes comes back in meetings feeling like it's more stabs in the dark than it is hard data, which you'd mentioned if we kind of go off the rails and have something more burdensome. I'm just wondering how we mitigate that.
So that's a great question. I think there are, like I mentioned, there are multiple ways to scale that effort. And I think depending on where in the process we're evaluating the health impacts, it could be more qualitative or more quantitative. And obviously, if we're doing a more quantitative assessment, we will definitely need to identify data sources. And I know members of our team are communicating with Lane County Public Health on the data that Lane County Public Health already tracks to see where there would be opportunities to leverage the data. So we're not, necessarily, having to track a new set of data or new indicators that we don't necessarily have the data for.
Commissioner Farr, do you still have a question?
Negative, Chair. That's a ghost hand. I'll take it down.
Ghost hand.
Okay. So next we have freight, goods, and movement. For this one, we have consider incorporating performance measures around freight access. So the RTP currently does contain freight mobility performance measures, though through supporting state targets for truck and travel time reliability, but MPC could consider additional performance measures to support freight. Any thoughts or discussion here? Okay,
I'm just only reminded, Rachel, of Springfield's battle with 9 roundabouts during this kind of discussion. So I think that's a really important procedure to go through because it could certainly make or break the idea of some project going forward.
Okay. So next we have travel demand management, and we recommend developing regional performance measures relating to TDM. So a little background here, regionally, we do track safe routes to school education, Get There challenge participants, and smart trips. These were not called out in the RTP specifically as performance measures. The Technical Advisory Committee discussed tying TDM performance measures to congestion management because programmatic performance measures have presented challenges in the past, both in agreeing on what to collect and then how to collect the data. And the other thing the Technical Advisory Committee brought up was that TDM could be considered from the perspective of parking and how to offset the demand given state mandates around parking reform and knowing that people are still driving.
Kelly's got a question, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I don't have a question. I just have a general comment that LTD is thinking along these same lines and is definitely interested in the community coordination, especially as it relates to transportation and health impacts.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So air quality, most of the recommendations were administrative. So number 11 is energy and fuels. We have 1, which is strengthen performance measures relating to energy and fossil fuel reductions. The RTP does have 1 related performance measure, which is support local and state efforts to reduce transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions. We think this sets the stage for a performance measure around energy and fuels, but doesn't necessarily meet the requirement for a measure that's quantifiable. I will note that the climate-friendly and equitable communities scenario planning outcomes may meet this need. And I'll also mention that the Technical Advisory Committee discussed the need to align with and also leverage other processes like CFEC that will result in performance measures. So we're definitely going to be looking at those other plans and processes for alignment as part of our federal performance-based planning and programming obligations. So, you know, we're not creating a bunch of extra performance measures that are not in sync with other things that are happening in our region. So any discussion here? Okay, so criterion 12 is financial sustainability. So it's more administrative and technical in nature. So we can move on to the next slide, Kelly. '13 is analysis methods, also more administrative and technical. So criterion 14 is transportation system management and operations, or TSMO. TSMO is a set of strategies focusing on operational improvements to maintain performance of the existing transportation system rather than expanding capacity. So we have 2 recommendations for your consideration. Discuss the desired level of investment in TSMO and consider including performance measures for TSMO in the RTP. Thoughts here? Okay, you move on. So linking asset management and planning was also largely administrative and technical. So we'll move on to number 16, which is infrastructure resiliency. Before I get to the recommendations, I just want to reiterate what Paul announced earlier, which is that we received the $5.3 million federal Protect grant to pursue transportation resiliency planning in partnership with the county. So that's going to be a multi-year planning effort that will inform both this RTP and the next one, because it'll extend beyond this update cycle. And the first step will be a vulnerability analysis of the multimodal network. So we're hoping at least some of those outcomes will be able to inform and address the recommendations that you see here. So for this criterion, we thought MPC would like to discuss 3 recommendations as they become relevant, keeping in mind that some of these may only be preliminary or get pushed to the next update cycle, depending on timing of Protect. So those 3 are: consider additional objectives to address resiliency, expand the resilience section of the RTP and incorporate an initial set of high-level adaptation strategies, and develop performance measures relating to infrastructure resilience. So we have 1 objective relating specifically to resiliency and the safety, security, and resiliency goal. And that is reduce the transportation system's vulnerability to natural disasters and climate change. So this would be an opportunity to improve on this existing best practice with either additional objectives or more specificity. And then we could expand the resilience section to include at least an initial set of high-level adaptation strategies, if not a more developed list, depending on how far along we are with Protect. And then finally, adding performance measures would just help us measure progress toward resilience goals and objectives. So any thoughts or discussion here? Okay, next slide. So finally, the last criterion is planning and environmental linkages, or PEL. PEL is basically a way to link system level planning with project level environmental analysis that's required by the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. So PEL can be used to create efficiencies in transportation project development and streamline project delivery. And there's 1 recommendation that may require additional discussion, which is consider including objectives or performance measures explicitly linking planning with NEPA documentation. So I'll just say here that we are aware that a lot of NEPA work is just generally outsourced, but to the extent that it's possible to include information in the RTP that's useful to NEPA practitioners, we'd like to do that to support and streamline the environmental review process. Any discussion? Okay, next slide, Kelly. So that's the list. On this slide, you'll see kind of a summary list of the recommendations we covered today. With MPC's direction, we'll work throughout this update process to integrate them into the RTP according to our capacity and our resources and available data sources. So although this presentation was primarily for information, we're definitely interested to hear any additional feedback you might have about the recommendations. Are there any on the list that you don't feel the need to discuss as they become relevant in the process, or are there any we should add or not pursue? So basically any final discussion at this point. Councilor Mo?
You're muted, Steve.
Of course. I had a question on slide number 2. Can you go to that real quickly? Okay, back. There it is. It says, we measure how well the current RTP incorporates, and here, does not measure how well it meets federal regulations. Does that mean it doesn't, or some of it? In other words, is this information we have, can we apply it to the federal regulations?
Kelly, I might ask for your support answering that question. I mean, because Invest is specifically focused on sustainability, it's separate from how well, how the RTP meets federal regulations. And we do go through our certification review process, and the RTP obviously is reviewed through that lens in other ways. And we have obligations to meet those federal regulations in a way that we don't have obligations to meet the outcomes of Invest, right? Because it was a voluntary tool. Kelly or Paul, do you have anything to add?
Yeah,
No,
I think you said that well,
Go ahead,
Rachel.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Council.
Kelly, you're up.
Oh, sorry. I know, Rachel, I think you captured it well. The Federal Code of Regulations has our kind of baseline set of things that we need to address in the RTP. Like Rachel said, this is a voluntary lens, and some other additional elements of the RTP that we have the opportunity to pursue to better kind of reflect what our community is asking us to reflect around triple bottom line sustainability.
Thank you, Kelly.
I have a question for you, Rachel. Tagging on to that idea is because we're going above the minimum and doing more than what's required. Does that carry with it also a substantial cost in doing that?
Well, like I said, one of the key takeaways that we took away as staff is that a lot of the updates that we were already planning for the RTP were also aligned with the outcomes of the evaluation. And so because there was a lot of alignment there actually isn't necessarily a lot of additional work. I mean, some of them will require additional work, and you as a body will be looking for your direction on that, on whether it's something that you want us to pursue. But overall, like I said, there was a lot of alignment in things that we're already planning, and there was also a lot of these best practices that we're already meeting, and it just might be an opportunity to kind of increase that sustainability or go one small step further to meet this best practice or to enhance what we're already doing.
Yeah, I guess the reason I asked that is because if we're going beyond what we're minimum and people don't really notice it or appreciate it, maybe we should find a way that they know that we're doing above and beyond so they appreciate it more. That's kind of my concern. But yeah, Mayor Van Gordon, you got a question.
Actually, I think that's a very good point. And I know we're in the early part of the process, so there'll be an opportunity to discuss further, especially on places where we're going further than what the requirement is. I would be very interested in learning more and what, strategic advantage that's bringing to us. In some cases, it could be about how do we position ourselves for more grant money, or how do we position ourselves, for, to better align planning, if you will. But I don't know that just to go further, makes sense to me. Right? Like it's got to go further to further our broader goals as an organization.
Well said, sir. Yep.
And if I may add, one of the federal requirements is that this RTP is consistent with and supports our local plans and policies. And given all of the kind of the groundwork that our local jurisdictions and partners have laid in this space around triple bottom line sustainability, we feel like this is complementary to that and consistent with it. And so having that level of coordination between the RTP and local jurisdictional plans does, I think, align us for some strategic advantages. Mayor Van Gordon has pointed out, like we can position ourselves for this funding, like Protect, showing our continuity and our coordination regionally.
And Chair, I do have one more comment about the safety element.
Shoot.
And this could be an opportunity to educate me offline too. But one of the one of the consistent stories I really hear is around the core data set around safety. And, if, even if we integrate trying to, I don't know, advocate for ourselves to get a better core data set, I would be really interested in pursuing that, because every time that I remember kind of starting the safety conversation, it seems to get wrapped up in timing, in alignment, in, what does the data even mean? And it just seems like we're playing catch up.
Yeah, I
Great,
appreciate the
Vito.
comment. I was just gonna say, Mayor Gordon, appreciate that comment definitely. And I think, there's also the recognition that we as an MPO don't always have a lot of control over all of the factors that go into safety and safety outcomes. And so that is definitely a consideration. So thank you.
Mr. Vidal.
Thank you, Chair. Wow, this is a pretty deep presentation here. I kind of love all the items and so forth, but two things I just want to bring up. Item number 14, TESMO, I think is the acronym we're using here, which is pretty cool. And all operational systems, obviously, the metropolitan roads do impact other systems elsewhere. And I'm understanding that this one here, putting in some measures in place or additional measures in place for this TESMO into the RTP. What type of or what level of cooperation will you be going with these other agencies, knowing that you're targeting one level, if I can say this right, you're targeting one level for your system here. What level of cooperation with our other agencies we're going to be having, such that we could at least see to it that you're meeting your targets and we're meeting our targets, if that makes sense to you? I'm trying to conceptualize this here.
Yeah, so like Kelly said, we're definitely, one of our requirements, our federal requirements, is that we are aligned with other plans and processes. So we certainly would not want to be doing something that is so out of step with what ODOT's doing that it doesn't align or make sense. And the other thing that I'll mention is that we do have TISMO performance measures currently in the Intelligent Transportation System Plan and in the congestion management process. So we could consider kind of looking at what's already in those plans and pulling more of them into the RTP as strategies to manage operations. So in some places, in some ways, there are existing sources that have been developed in coordination with, with this body and with ODOT already, that we could just consider kind of pulling in and maybe building on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Rachel or Kelly? Okay, we're going to chew on it for a while, Rachel. I'm sure there'll be more questions later. And if anyone wants to have these slides for reference, is there a way that they can get a hold of those?
Absolutely, we can send those out. Thank you.
Maybe stick that in the chat, a link or something would be awesome. Yeah. All right. Moving right along, got some other information for the MPO committee. It looks like Vidal, you were the last voice, and you're going to be the next one coming up for an ODOT report. Do you have anything there to add?
Thank you, Chair. Not a whole lot today, and I did miss y'all last month. Sorry, I was out getting my hand worked on, if that makes sense to you. OTC did not meet last month, and just for everyone's information, they do have a meeting scheduled in August 1st, where they'll be not necessarily in town, but they'll actually be in the Florence area for the August meeting. Just wanted to let everyone be aware of that. Typically, they do come to Eugene, but this year they're coming down to Florence. And I think most of you are probably already aware that the Joint Committee on Transportation has kind of laid out at least the cities, if you will, that they will be stopping to within the next, starting in June all the way through September. Several cities have been identified, and Eugene is on the list for July 17th. And again, I'm getting some questions around what may or may not be happening, but I don't have anything definitive to tell this group, at least at this time. But I'm hoping that I'll have some more updates on that as we move forward. Beyond that, don't have anything else much more, Chair, to share with the group, at least for today.
All right. Well, Vidal, hope that hand's healing well, sir. We need to make sure you can wave and vote in that virtual window. All right, well, good. All right, how about anybody have a chance to look over the TIP project changes? I'm kind of stoked about it. We're adding another 700K to the Mill Street project. Mayor Van Gordon, do you have any idea when we're going to scrape some ground and get that going?
It is going to go over the two new construction cycles. It's a huge project for us as a city, $17 million to completely restore, replace, upgrade, use whatever term you have. Springfield's pretty excited about it. They're working on moving the utilities now, and then most of the road will get reconstructed next construction season.
All right, awesome. Springfield, best town in Lane County. Oh, that should be a t-shirt, don't you think? I'm liking that. All right, is there anything else? Anybody else have anything else to add before we round to a close? Our next meeting is June 6th. Paul, you've got your hand up.
Chair, yes, I was going to mention not only is the next meeting June 6th, but at this time we are planning to cancel the July MPC meeting. It happens to fall on July 4th, so we thought that'd be a bad time to meet. And the August meeting is tentative. We originally thought we might have some time-sensitive items and need to meet in August, but that's not the case. We will talk to you in June about whether to hold an August meeting. That's also usually an issue because many of your committees and councils, et cetera, are on hiatus in that month. The other thing I want to mention real quick is, as Vidal said, the Joint Committee on Transportation, or Legislators Joint Committee on Transportation, will be in Eugene July 17th. We'll keep you updated. Hopefully you may be able to hold that date. It looks like they're going to have a pretty good discussion. They have asked for input specifically around maintenance needs and possible policy solutions for sustainable funding. In other words, they're looking for what possible ideas there may be to create more sustainable funding flow, specifically for ODOT, whether that's indexing the gas tax, moving to the per mile based revenue system or something else. But I think they're going to have that discussion around policy solutions for funding, and then a needs assessment, not solely limited to, but the information so far seems to say focused on maintenance in particular.
Awesome. So I was just kind of curious, you couldn't figure out a way to do fireworks on a Zoom meeting on July 4th, Paul? Was that really the reason why we have to cancel?
I probably could figure that out if you want.
All right, well, thank you. Well, look, before we adjourn, I want to give you a quote to send you off with. A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. That's John Maxwell for all of you. And I just want you to be blessed this week and go show the way to be a great leader like you are. Appreciate the attendance and thank you for your meeting and your comments. We'll see you next time. We're adjourned.
Thank you.